Hi. This history story is from Wonder Women, and it is the story of Huang Daopo. She lived from 1240 to 1330, and she was a Chinese textile pioneer. They say necessity is the mother of invention, and nothing says necessity like Kublai Khan is invading, and everyone I love is poor, but still needs clothes. The woman known as Huang Daopo grew up needing many things, not least a better living situation than the abusive foster home in which she grew up. She likely never realized that mustering the bravery to escape would lead her to revitalize an entire industry. Around 1240 in China, things were getting pretty wild. The Mongol armies of Genghis and Kublai Khan were fighting constantly to take control of the country, and though the millions of people living in the cities thrived, residents of farming towns had a way harder time, especially the women. But despite, or perhaps because, of the invasions, the Song dynasty saw much economic and technical advancement. Craftspeople would follow in the steps of the Mongol army, which had entire government offices devoted to watching over and regulating artisan families. The weaving industry, in particular, was big business. People gotta wear clothes, And the Chinese were known for their complex and high-quality brocades. Though everyone wanted some sweet cotton clothes, the processes for making them were incredibly inefficient. Weaving required a ton of work. Cloth makers had to clean the seeds out of raw cotton by hand, fluff it by beating the fibers using a bamboo bow fitted with a hammer, and spin it using a slow, single-spindle, hand-turned spinning wheel. Harder still than producing fabric was growing enough stuff to eat. And Songyang, a town outside what is now Shanghai, was cursed with soil that was too poor to produce food crops, let alone cotton. In a country beset by strife, Songyang's inhabitants were suffering. Into this harsh world, Wang was born, probably around 1240 or 1245, and likely to an impoverished family, at least according to scholar Wang Fang, who calls our heroine cut from a different cloth, because puns are awesome. Huang was her family name. Her first name has been lost to history. Daopo is a later addition, an honorific we might equate to Auntie Huang. Huang was probably sold to another family in what was called a Xinhua marriage, basically an arranged union in which a family with a young boy adopted another family's young daughter, sometimes as early as infancy, engaged the pair, and then raised them together to be married around 12 years old. Known as little daughter-in-law, or let's be honest, child bride. Girls in these setups provided another set of hands, guaranteed a cheap marriage, no bride price for the groom's family to pay, and were thought to produce male offspring. In reality, Xinhua marriages were far less likely to be successful than regular marriages because, according to what sociologists call the Westermarck effect, you can't really feel romantic about someone you grew up with like a sibling. Huang's adoptive family was apparently the absolute worst to her, too. Indeed, mistreatment was common for Xinhua girls. Mothers, devastated at having to give away their own babies while raising a stranger's, would work the adopted girls to exhaustion, often failing to provide adequate food or shelter. So, Huang bust out of there, literally. In her mid-teens, or possibly as young as 12, she is said to have burst through the thatched roof of her in-laws' home. She then ran as far and as fast as she could and hid herself in a boat on the Huangpo River, a boat that carried her all the way to Yazhou on Hainan Island, off the southern coast of China. Hainan Island was home to the ethnic Li peoples, who had, and still have, in fact, a unique culture and language entirely separate from those of mainland China, including their own ways of cultivating and weaving cotton. Huang lived there for over 30 years, learning super effective weaving and spinning skills. She left the island around 1296, at 50-ish years old, and returned to her hometown. But Huang didn't return alone. Not only did she bring back a finer, higher grade of cotton seed than could be grown locally, but she also had in her brain all the amazing Hainan techniques for turning those seeds into shirts. First, she developed a 2-roller cotton gin to eliminate seeds from the cotton, which was way faster than picking them by hand. The Western world wouldn't see anything like it for 500 years when Eli Whitney patented his cotton gin, although he probably got the idea from a woman named Catherine Green, but that is another not entirely shocking story. Next, Huang showed the local people a better way of bowing, which used 5-foot wooden clappers tied to a wooden bow to untangle and fluff the fiber to prep it for spinning. And then she made a 3-spindle, treadle-operated spinning wheel that allowed one person to spin multiple threads at the same time. Yet another innovation that wouldn't be seen in Europe until the advent of the spinning jenny, again, over 500 years later. With this wheel, one could make about 6 ounces of cotton per day, enough to start weaving in just 4 days. All this innovation was huge for the town of Songyang. Biographer Tao Zongyi says that Huang took one of the poorest regions in China and made it into one of the most prosperous. Suddenly, it was the cotton production capital of the world. Because you need humid weather to weave properly, or the thread gets too brittle and cold. But you need less humid weather to grow the seeds. Northern China would grow all the cotton and ship it down to Songyang, where it was turned into items like belts, mattresses, handkerchiefs, and the famously gorgeous cotton silk jacquard quilts made with beautiful interlocking and color matching, sometimes the widely sought after cloud cloth pattern featuring flowers, phoenixes, and Chinese characters. Surrounded by waterways and lots of people familiar with hemp and silk spinning, Songyang became a national trading hub, and thousands of people's lives were changed for the better. Huang became a national hero. 7 years after her death, in 1330, the people around Songyang collected money to build a shrine in her honor, and Granny Huang became the subject of a popular folk song about spinning and cloth making. Her shrine and tomb are now in the Shanghai Botanical Gardens, which also hosts a statue of her likeness at the center of a courtyard. The 2010 Chinese miniseries, A Weaver on the Horizon, was very loosely based on what we know of her life. She's on a Scientists of Ancient China stamp, and she's even got a crater on Venus named after her, which is pretty cool. And it all started because she had the courage to break out on her own. The end.